All right, we're back in. Yeah? My son's middle school football coach. More power than any human being I've ever met. He would say, "Eyes on me." And you get 40 middle school kids that just go, I don't have that kind of power. But what I do have is a lot more to say. So I'm going to do my best. Feel free to eat. Feel free to interact as you will. And I'm going to see if I can compete with dinner. So, I think I'm going to move from this slide and talk about this. So, intrusive mental processes. You want to have no obsessional thoughts? It's not going to work. This is a study, actually a series of studies done in Britain. 80 to 90% of people who were in this study said they experienced an occasional intrusive thought over the course of the last week. These are folks who don't have OCD. And what I would also say to this one is the 10 to 20% who said they didn't were lying. Everybody. Sort of a hallmark of creativity, right? If you're only having the thoughts you want to have, you're not going to be a very creative thinker. So, they're similar in content to the stuff that you see on the OCD checklists. So, typical stuff pops up. Not that big a deal. They tend to be exacerbated with stress, but they subside. They probably subside for two reasons. One is most people don't make a big deal out of them. And two is there may well be a neurobiologic vulnerability to having them in folks who have OCD. I think that's reasonable to say. There's a biologic element to this, but biology is certainly not destiny. And how you handle them when they come up will dictate their long-term outcome. So, we try to get people to recognize and separate their own thinking from OCD. And externalizing OCD is one of the ways we do it. In kids, I'll talk much more about that. But basically saying, just because your OCD says something is true doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And we're trying to cultivate non-attachment from obsessions. If you have a thought, so what? A horrific thought, so what? Whatever. Sort of master that. Like, it doesn't matter. Pick the thoughts, like you're fishing, pick the thoughts you want to keep. Everything else, throw back. And if you can do that, you can reduce emotional valence that you give to thoughts, and the thought suppression effects are reduced. Now, the ceiling fan example, which is something I was reminded of over lunch, this is an example of me having one. So I'm in my office, working on a grant, stress, deadlines, money at stake, for heaven's sake, bad. So it's like 9 o'clock at night and I'm in my office. And I hear the ceiling fan. And it's going click, 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 click. Anyone ever read A Telltale Heart? So I call maintenance, like, you got to get in the ceiling and fix that thing. And the guy said, he's a friend. Yeah, I got you, no problem, doc. So he goes up, fixes it. I go in the next night to work on my grant. Ka-click, ka-clack. Ka-click, ka-clack, ka-click, ka-clack. And then it starts skipping intermittently. So now it's not even predictable. So I send him up one more time, another work order. This time it's silence. Ka-click. Ka-clack. I've had it. It's like 11 o'clock at night. This grant's due like Monday. It's Thursday. I go to the broom closet. I get out a long broom. I stand on a chair that has wheels on it. Which, I played offensive line. I'm not a lithe creature. So I'm on a chair with wheels on it. I am bashing the ceiling to try to get into the thing so I can rip it out. At some point, now the windows in my office become mirrors at night. I catch a glimpse of myself on the downswing, bright red, sweating, and really looking unhinged. And I'm down like this, and I think to myself, you know what? You need to develop a new relationship with your ceiling fan. Put the broom down. I decided this is one of those things I don't control. It's going to do what it's going to do. I got a job to do. Got the grant out. And nothing ever changed about it. But I only hear it now when I tell this story. Or when I see the slide that alludes to it. It's still doing it. But it's out of my hands. So what? Like, think of the bitter irony of me trying to have a perfectly silent office when I'm telling people with OCD to ignore their thoughts. What are you doing, man? So, it's funny, because the broom marks are still up there. No one's ever asked me about them. I'm kind of glad about that. So, distance yourself from your thoughts. They're just thoughts. Now, getting into exposure for adults. In vivo exposure, doing it right there. Imaginal exposure. And they should typically be connected to homework. I do a bunch of exposure in session. I send you out to do something between sessions. Customarily, a little bit easier than what we did in session. I do the hard stuff and then you follow me. Do the hard stuff, you follow me. Imaginal exposure essentially is the Stephen King stories. If you have a worst case scenario, I want to get my hands on it. Write it up. Record it. Listen to it. Again and again and again and again and again. Anyone ever see The Exorcist? So The Exorcist. I was a cool 8th grader when it came out. My friend had this fancy thing called cable television. So we all went down to his basement, turned off all the lights. Oh, it's supposed to be a horror movie. How bad can it be? By the middle of the movie, every light in the house was on. We had like the vestiges of sports radio on. We were all sitting there talking, like sort of staring at the screen like this. Pretty bad. But what's neat about it is, like anything else, the more you watch it, it kind of gets boring. There's one particular scene, I actually had a patient, an adult patient, who had this image of this scene in The Exorcist. And she thought that the scene meant, like, the scene wasn't in the movie. She thought it was something that might be coming from her. Very famous scene. It's a dream sequence with the younger priest is having a dream about his deceased mother. And she's walking up the subway stairs. And she's walking. Horrible yellow face! Walking. And she was convinced that there was no yellow face. So guess what we did? Exposure. It was like a VHS version of this thing. This is how long ago it was. And we just watched it again and again and again and again and again. And you can even see, you can slow it down, you can see the film spliced. It was way before they got all fancy with computers. So it's like, first of all, just confirming your fears. Second of all, we watched this thing about 300 times. And it was nothing. Nothing. It's done. But now you learned a way to handle the next one. There's always the tree level. What's the thing in front of you now? But more importantly, what's the forest level? How do I use these procedures in the next time something comes up? So OCD may well throw you a next time. Not the same content. Okay? I model exposure with one exception. Every once in a while I get somebody who you're doing a contamination exposure, they're afraid they're going to get poisoned. So of course we go and touch the floor and hit the dumpster ladder and all sorts of things. And then we're going to share a meal. I remember one adult in particular, I'm grabbing my stuff ready to eat and I see the person's like this. They got their food here. Like, what's you doing? And the eyes go like this. You're waiting for me to eat, aren't you? Like I'm kind of like Castro's food taster here. Like you're waiting for me to eat. Because if I eat and I don't die, then it's okay to eat, right? Yeah. So how should we do this? Based on your knowledge of this treatment, what should we do right now? I suppose I should eat first? Yeah, because it's not an exposure if you wait for me. Let's go. Let's get it right. Good job pointing it out. Good for you. Now let's do it right. I usually model to just show how it's supposed to happen, but if that's an issue, I want to be facile enough to catch it. And I do OCD wherever the OCD is. Treatment's got to go out there. I had a teenager once whose primary fear had to do with things related to death. You know, and I can conjure that up in my office to an extent. But really, where do I need to be? Yeah, cemetery, of course. Got to go to the cemetery. We had lunch in the cemetery, we drove through the cemetery, laid on the stones. We did. We got caught once, too. Laying on I had the patient laying on the stone, and a couple of jeeps come by, down into the ravine. And it's the security people. And they're like, what are you up to? And my patient's like this. So he's not going to answer. So I said, well, I'm a professor of archaeology at Penn, and we've come down here, this is one of my students, come down here to see the differences in size over the course of the last several hundred years. This is a cemetery that's got lots of people from 200 years ago. We want to see, we're just checking some things out, doing some measurements, and finally the guy's like, stop. Enough. So, okay, carry on, but remember, we close at dusk. Okay, fabulous. So they drive away. And the person's still like this. And I'm like, well, you look a little anxious. He's like, yeah. So, you know, I think they bought it. I think they went away. And the guy's like, I'm not anxious about them. What do you mean? Well, I'm anxious about you. How quickly you could come up with a lie that was that detailed. And my response was, well, thank you. Gotta be quick on your feet when you're doing this stuff sometimes. All right. Can you read that? I'm finally learning how to relax. Unfortunately, relaxation makes me tense. Relaxation makes me tense. So I don't think I need it. Theoretically, I don't need it. OCD is a false alarm. So why am I giving you all these methods to put out a false alarm? No, it's unnecessary. And I think I'm being theoretically inconsistent if I'm giving you one. I'll use it if I'm desperate. So if someone's a full panic attack, I'll teach them a little bit of breathing. But for the most part, I'd rather go up the hierarchy slowly and not require this. It's not the way I need to work. So, imaginal exposure. Help them engage in thoughts that they've avoided. You know, the Exorcist analogy, the 100th time you watch the film, less anxiety-provoking it's going to be. So tell your story again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Record it, listen to it. Books on tape. Imaginal exposures on tape. Just pretty easy to do these days. And that's the idea. Get used to it, because I want you to get used to the long version. And every once in a while you run into an exposure, imaginal exposure, where the in vivo is hard to do. I had a guy once who thought that if he saw the number 10 and encountered it, it meant that he was going to evaporate. Tough one. And if he encountered the number 5, he thought that he was going to be buried alive. Now, try as I did with in vivo exposure, there's some limits to what I can do. So we did much more imaginal exposure with that case. And then, of course, confronting the 10s and the 5s and not doing the compulsions. Another one you get is the driving one. So people who are driving and they're afraid they might have hit somebody, right? So they get obsessed, they might have hit somebody, and they go back, compulsively circle back to look, just to make sure. So I do a ton of imaginal exposure to hitting people. I can't run people over. It's frowned upon. It's in Philadelphia. So I drive, and we hit bumps. I know where every single bumpy street is in this city, or that city. I know where they all are. The best place to do that is the Italian market. Anyone ever driven in the Italian market on a Saturday? So you're driving through the Italian market and people are like crossing under your car, over your car. It's interesting because when you're treating driving phobias, the highways are usually the hardest. When treating OCD version of driving, the highways are usually the easiest because you don't see too many people. It's the people. So I find the school schedules. What time are the schools letting out? About 3. Good. Let's get in the car about 2:55. Turn it on. Why am I doing that? Because that's where the vulnerable are. Right? Now, do we make a habit of running over children after school? No. But we drive the cars, and we don't do excessive checking in the rearview mirror. We just drive. So many of my sessions where people come, like I know it's 2 o'clock, I'll go downstairs. It's like an Uber. Car comes and picks me up, and we go driving. It's an hour and a half in the car. I do what I have to do where I have to do it. Okay? So, I tend to start with the easier stuff, work my way up, because I want success. Remember the bunting analogy? I'm throwing 30 miles an hour, lobbing the ball at you, and I'm telling you, good job every time you touch a ball. Good job, good job, good job, nice work, good job, good job. Do that about 20 or 40 times. When you're getting the ball consistently, 18 or 20, 18 out of 20, now I'm raising the bar. This is the early stuff. Good job, good work, nice work, good job. Can get really annoying. Nice work, good job. So, I encourage them to abstain from rituals, and any problems we run into, we try to troubleshoot together. So what do you make of this? And these are adults. What do you make of this? I might have missed something. How does it work at work? You tell me. You tell me. Say it all the time. You tell me. I'm not the oracle. Right? You tell me. As we get more of it, better at it, past successes, I'm pointing out. In this case, I have a child. This is really an adult slide. Encourage people to choose from among equivalents for exposure. And anything that's different, I know. A adult come in my office one day and she just sits down, puts her hands on my chair. About session 7. I'm like, huh. I said, do you notice that? She's like, what? Do you notice how you sat down? She's like, no. So we started doing exposure 4 weeks ago. Do you remember how you sat down in my office during the intake? Not really. I do. You eased into the chair and sat down like you were about to take out my kidney. You sat here for 90 minutes like this because you're afraid of that chair. And I see you already, and we're not where we want to be yet, I see already, you're not even thinking about that now. That's a sign that we're getting somewhere. It's important at this point because sometimes people feel like it's, oh, when am I going to get there? Right? Ever take a trip with your kids? We were driving to North Carolina a couple of years ago. I'd pull out of West Philadelphia onto the highway. How long is it going to be? 11 hours. 11 hours? Yeah. I hope you brought stuff to entertain yourselves. But now they take my radio. They steal my radio. So now I'm the one who said, well, how long is it going to be? I had nothing to entertain myself with, except my own thoughts. Scary as that may be. So, move them up. Be ambitious. Move them up. Don't wait forever. I don't need complete habituation before I move up. Let's go. 18 out of 20. Close enough. Move up. Let's go. Let's keep moving. I'm ambitious. I try not to be a jerk about it, but I'm ambitious, and they know it. Let's go. The gesture they get from me a little bit. Good. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Keep going. So, praise effort. Model, as I said. If they're getting stuck, I can always use what they call the hip pocket patient examples. People who have similar stuff and have suffered. Sometimes I have real people who are willing to talk to people. If I get really desperate, I'll do that. I got people on my speed dial. You want talking to somebody who's got the same thing you did? And those people they are so much more valuable than me. I can say this till I'm blue in the face. That's why this panel is so cool. Because I can talk for 12 hours. No one wants to hear it, but I can talk, and then what they're going to get out of this panel is going to be more than anything I have to say at all. Because I'm not living it, they are. Okay? So use them if you have to. Unacceptable versus acceptable risk. There's risk involved in living. No guarantees in any of it. I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow. I like my odds. I don't think I'm in a risk group. But I live as if I might be. And I'm not going to avoid. Time is precious. Make the most of it. But don't try to back up to preserve yourself. You're losing more that way. And exposure in multiple contexts. Not just in my office. Everywhere. And when they're getting to the point of being done, we talk about what they learned. We talk about the difference between a lapse and a relapse. Lapse is an occasional return. A relapse is a commitment to the old way of being. Happens. Lapses are pretty common. I make that normative. Relapses, we may need to go back and dust off the old stuff. We talk about when we can make predictions about when it's likely to get worse. Stress, finals, family stuff, elderly parents. All that stuff's going to drive that up. And you got to be ahead of it. That's when you need to do more exposure, not less. Don't give yourself a break. Oh, I've had a tough week. I'm going to give myself a break. Can you give yourself a break by making the OCD worse? That sounds like a bad idea to me. Stay on it. Very active. It's a blitzing defense. Confront this thing. You get back on your heels and it's going to start taking territory from you. All right. Kids. Older kids and adolescents. I got a separate section on little guys. I love kids. Kids, because they're as refreshingly direct as I am. I don't think I ever grew out of that. They'll tell you. I don't understand what you're talking about. I'm not doing that. We're at an impasse, I see. Like, it's so much easier. They'll tell you. And I got to engage them. I got to engage them where they are. Really important to do that. When you're dealing with adolescents in particular, it's also really important to ignore tone. Yeah. How you doing this week? Fabulous. It's good to see you too. Tell me what's going on. Right? As opposed to, don't you take that tone with me, young man. Insufferable. And you're not going to be a good therapist if you're going to be fighting those little battles every time. You don't need to like being here either. You don't need to like me. I'm good. I like you fine, but if you're having a tough day, you're having a tough day, so be it. You want to get some work done anyway? Up to you. And I don't respond in that way. I don't provide negative attention for that kind of behavior. And it's like, huh? An adult who's not going to tell me to watch my mouth? What? I had one kid once. This is an example I put in the book. So we're doing a contamination exposure. She's 13. And we'd done some good work. We're ready to do the bathroom. So I walk to the bathroom. I'm sitting on the bathroom floor with my arm around the toilet like this. Like an old treasured pal from graduate school. Nice to see you too. And the kid walks into the bathroom and she just stops. This is on our schedule. We had talked about this. Just stopped in the bathroom doorway. Wouldn't even close the door. She's like, I'm not doing that. Well, up to you. And well, we did talk about it last time after we did some other things in the bathroom. What's going on today? She says, well, I talked to my friends at lunch about what we're going to do. And she goes, and you know what they said? And my response was, I'd imagine it wasn't favorable. You see what I'm doing? I'm already getting small. I imagine it wasn't favorable. No, it wasn't favorable. And none of them would do it. None of them. And they don't even have OCD. None of them. Nobody's touching a public toilet. So now, I channel Sean Mullins. Anyone ever listen to Sean Mullins? Singer-songwriter, really good. And he wrote a song called The Ballad of Billie Joe McKay. In the middle of that song, really good song, he writes, "Is like a Mississippi porch on a summer Saturday." So when a kid is coming at me this way, the first thing I think of is Sean Mullins. My response can't be escalation, a response to escalation. Can't be. Gary Nessner. You ever read Gary Nessner? FBI agent. He was one of the first people to develop the hostage negotiation crew at the FBI. And his one fundamental tenet is when you see people escalating, you automatically need to de-escalate. Remember what I said earlier? Step back, but not down. So I'm low key. And I said, well, you know, what people do who don't have OCD doesn't have much bearing on what we need to do. She's just standing and looking at me. And I just gesture. Up to you. And then I said, this is what really got under her skin. And it was one of those conversations I had in the intake that no one knows what I was doing. I said, but one thing I will suggest is a toilet seat here in my office is probably a little better than the one you'll encounter at horseback riding camp this summer in West Virginia. She told me all about horses, told me all about what she's going to do. And that led to a litany of swearing like she was a long-haul trucker. I will not repeat it. Suffice it to say, it was colorful. She's mad at me. She's mad at me for contaminating this exposure with that. Really mad. I'm like, it's true. So if you want to be comfortable there, I think we got to do this. And we don't have to do it today. It's up to you. I'm not going to make you do anything. Remember I told you that in the beginning? I'm not going to make you do anything. I'm not going to make you do this. But I'd like to see you do it because I think it's going to make that easy when you go. And she pounced on it. She, angrily grabs it. Is this good enough for you? Is this good enough for you? Right? There's another temptation for me to say, no, young lady, you must do it the proper way. No. I say a word. It's doing good work. Good for you. Good for you. And eventually, 45 minutes or so, sitting on the bathroom floor, anxiety's not gone, but it's down. And now she's starting to feel some remorse. She's like, earlier, when I said that stuff to you, I'm sorry. My response was, it's fine. It's tough. I get it. So I might have said, if you left a few things out, I might have said. And then she's like, you don't have to tell my mom about the outburst, do you? I'm like, what outburst? We got you. We're good. Another 2 or 3 weeks of those kinds of exposures. Bathroom stuff dropped. And months later, I got a postcard. On the front was a sunset, all these horses in West Virginia running around. On the other side, all it says is, Dr. Franklin, you were right. I wasn't sure if she meant like the bathroom is horrible or the exposure was necessary. My guess is both. Good for you, kid. I'll forgive you a little outburst. That's not even on my register. You're good. We're good. We got you. That's yours with a kid. You know, if you're going to be responsive to that, you're going to change your relationship because they got upset. I don't know. Maybe there's some insurance to be sold or something, because this is not going to be a good match for your style. Younger the kid, more directive I am. Younger the kid, the more I need the parents. Got to watch my language even more in terms of age-appropriate metaphors. Goal setting, reinforcers, rewards. And I may, with the young kids, we did that trial that Alan referenced before. It was the main outcome was published in 2014 in JAMA. And in this one, the parents were in for every single session. Kids ages 5 to 8. Every session, parents are sitting right there with me. And so I'm teaching them to do what I do. Every once in a while, you know, OCD sometimes runs in families. You get a parent who's going to struggle with the same thing their kid is. I had one kid, a contamination kid, and I brought in my old Tonka trucks from my own childhood, which, do the math on that. They're all like rickety and broken. I had this cement mixer that like had stuff in it from like 45 years ago. And the kid is loving it, because these are solid trucks. You can haul stuff, like legitimately. Big rocks in there, so we're playing with the thing. And I'm sitting on the floor with the kid. And I look up and I see the mom sort of against my file cabinet, like a single tear coming down her face. And it wasn't like, you're doing such great work with my kid. It's like, you mean I have to do that? Right? And I know right away, guess who's got to join us? Because if I'm going to do this work and you're going to undo it, we're going to have trouble. So I looked at mom. Like, so do you want to try the cement mixer or the fire truck? He's like, fire truck. Because the cement mixer is just beyond something out of Planet of the Apes. It was just awful. So, lo and behold, we get the other things going. Work mom in. I lent them the trucks too. Take this stuff with you. Be careful about the rust. You don't want to get lockjaw. Much easier than to play with her own stuff and his own stuff. Much easier, right? Because they've done this. So, with adolescents, the first thing you got to do is respect their autonomy. They want to be heard. They want to develop into separate individual people. So if you're talking to an adolescent through the parent, one of my adolescents is once, why are you guys talking about me as if I'm not here? Huh. Well, that's a mistake, isn't it? You appear to be here. What do you got to say? What do you think about what we're talking about? Like, get them in. They want less control. And sometimes OCD will slow that process down developmentally, but I want to encourage it. What do you think? With my adolescents, sometimes mid-treatment, I'll have them come in and I'll say, okay, you kind of know already what I'm going to say. How about this? How about you take my chair, you're the therapist, I'm you, tell me what to do. What are we doing? What are we up to? Because it's a way for me to check on them conceptually, make sure they get it. But it's also a reminder, this is your baton now. Not about me. I don't want you listening to me. It's a problem. And if adolescents are slow in doing that, I'll actually drag this one out, which is an old phrase from the monastery, training Buddhist monks. It's an old phrase, which is, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. People are like, what? What? Some adolescent will say, she says, I thought it was a peaceful religion. Well, it's a metaphor. And the metaphor is this: don't follow me. Make your own way. Understand the principles, understand the force level that this treatment operates at, and OCD operates at, and you apply it. Because it's going to move on you. That's one thing we know. More so that with adolescents than with adults, the content's going to move. And when the content moves, you better know what's up next. Right? Some of my athletes, I'm cheating a football player recently, and you watch the line of scrimmage, like you're the quarterback, and you thought they were going to be in this defense, and they're not. They just brought their safety up into the box. I'm like, okay, now what? You better change your play. You're going to run a ball right there? You check down. You watched the Super Bowl this year? I watched about 80 times.
Me too.
So he comes down to the line, 4th and 1, end of the first half. He walks in, looks at it, he screams, "Kill, kill." So he's trying to convince them that they're just changed the play, which they didn't, which was very clever. But when you come to the line, you kill a play, it means we're going to do this and now we're not. I need my adolescents to be able to make that same kind of call. Don't do it because I said so. Because I said so is a really, really bad rationale. You tell me. I was going to sit in that chair, but I see there's a stain on this one. What should I do? Kill, kill. I need to be over there. And then I want them to explain it to me. Why'd you move? Why'd you pick that one instead of this one? I want them to be able to explain it. They can show me they get it. Gotta be creative. Quick on your feet. I do a lot of blasphemy hangman for my scrupulosity cases. So I make up the phrasings, and then they start getting the letters to fill them in. Try to make it a little bit fun in the beginning, but then eventually we're going to write the horrible scripts about losing our souls to the devil, etc. Age-appropriate language and metaphors. And I think this is probably really the most important point. The kids are getting it. Reinforce them for it. I tell kids all the time, you know what, I think you could probably pass the state licensing exam right now in psychology. Good for you. You get it. You get it better than a lot of therapists do. So now let's see how you apply it to this next thing. I need you to understand at a conceptual level what it is that we're doing. Because it's your life, not mine. If you're just sitting here listening to me, not good enough. You need to understand it. Now, I am a coach, so I don't think I look any different whatsoever at softball practice versus in the office. I'm the same. It's coaching. I'm trying to teach you what I know so you can get rid of me. So you don't need me anymore. So you can make the decisions on the field you need to make. And it's us against it, not us against you. That's what we got to do. And sometimes with the younger kids, which I'll get into, we even come up with a nickname for OCD. So we're calling it, not you. I had one kid come in, I said, well, you give this nickname thing any idea? She's like 11. I said, yeah, I came up with a good one. Okay, what is it? She goes, Oliver Charles Darwin. I'm like, I did this. My dog does this one too. He goes like this. And she just looks at me like I'm daft. She goes, OCD. Oh yeah, that's good. Oliver Charles Darwin. Very nice. And I'm happy to throw myself under the bus for the kid to feel smart. Because they are smart, and I want to reinforce they're smart. Right? They're just doing what I say. It's not enough. Okay? With kids, I think I like this one a little bit. OCD is like diabetes. It's got a neurobehavioral bent to it, if you will. Right? The brain is implicated. That's not controversial, I don't think. But just because it's biological doesn't mean it's destiny. Diabetes, some of the most effective treatments for diabetes are behavior change. So, you have a biological thing. You get a glitch. Right? A brain hiccup, which is what John Marty used in the first manual. Okay. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to work around it. So we'll teach you how to do that. And the naming really is another way to come up with this. I've had a couple kids, especially adolescents, who come up with Voldemort. I'd like to call my OCD Voldemort. I'm like, well, how committed are you to that? Because he sounds like the prince of all evil and sounds pretty powerful. How about we try something else? And sometimes they'll say, no, I want Voldemort. Fair enough. But we'll make them small, shall we? One I've had a lot of success with the younger kids is Plankton. the villain from SpongeBob. Now, I like him because he's this big. And he walks around with a bullhorn telling you what to do, but every once in a while the character's like, wait a minute. Pick him up and move him. And you got to understand, you have that power. He can be blathering all he wants, but it's your choice. You have a choice. So I'm basically teaching you what can you do already, and how do we boss back the OCD. It's barking at you. I want you to boss it back. Now this is super important with families, right? That's a reassurance question, and mom is doing a little bit of extinction. First thing I tell parents here is blame me. Dr. Franklin says we shouldn't answer such questions. And I want the conceptual understanding there. Because this is hard to do. Right? And you don't always get it right the first time. Right? Sometimes it doesn't go well. So, I'll actually role play this. I'll have the kid be the parent, and I'm the kid. I pass through the parents for reassurance. Are you sure? Are we sure? We're going to be okay? We're sure? You're sure we're going to be okay, right? You sure? Yeah. You're sure we're sure, right? You're sure? We're double sure? Like super double sure? Yeah. You sure? We're sure, right? And the kid starts getting irritated. I've had a couple kids, will you please stop? Good. Building a little empathy. All right, so let's figure out how we should answer this. We come up with a script. Practice it. You're not going to get it right the first time. You're not going to get it right every time. Do the best you can. We can get around this. So I try to get parents with older kids and with adolescents to stop doing all this stuff. I hate this. I don't like surprise interventions. Blah. Don't. Like, was it King Lear? Say what you mean and mean what you say. Don't tell them, oh, I forgot to wash this. Or, don't. It's not helpful. To be on the same page. And I'm not a huge fan of this either. Parents trying to take the wheel out of my hands. Until you're ready, I'll let you know when we're ready. In the meantime, let me do this. I got this. 27 years. Every single day for 27 years. I got it. Hand it over in time. But I don't want to jump the gun. Because sometimes parents want to go faster than the kid can go. Well, she's already touching the trash cans. Can't she take out the garbage? We'll get there. So that's a great target. Kid, what do you think? The kid's like, right? Oh, we'll get there. Let's figure it out. Figure it out together. No surprises. And reward the kid for what she's already doing. Don't keep stepping the bar higher so that she can't ever reach the reinforcers. I'm a little wary here. It's just my LCD. It's just my LCD in sets of 4. Yeah, that feels like a ritual to me. So I'm cautious to make sure I'm telling you this is about all these cognitive strategies, things you tell yourself. I got this. It's just my LCD. But the goal of that is to do the exposures, not to make the anxiety go away. Well, what are you doing if you're making the anxiety go away by repeating a particular phrase? It's compulsion. So, no guarantees. I don't know if you can see this. Kid's writing as a punishment assignment, I will stop my obsessive compulsive behavior. And basically, you're playing to the thing he wants. Doesn't get any better than this. He's doing compulsions. Like, don't give him things to make himself less anxious. That's the thing you're trying to get rid of. Okay? Praying is a good example here. You can pray all you want. If you're praying for the strength to do this treatment. But if you're praying to make the bad outcomes not happen, now you're in my territory. I'm really careful about that. Got to undo those. Those are not prayers. Those are compulsions. That's OCD wrapped in the cloak of your faith. It's a lie. If we wanted to get into the details of that, it's a golden calf. You're going to go Old Testament a little bit here. You made up your own faith. Like, what is this? Like, no. That's OCD. Leave it be. Take the risk. Okay? I like this one. Maps. It's hierarchy development, but it's a kid version. I like this one. OCD is like Hawaii. How is OCD like Hawaii? A vacation dreamland? No. It's a bunch of small islands that make up a single thing. And customarily, there's a big island. If we kind of break these up by obsessional theme, there might be a big island of contamination. There might be one where it's fear of doing things imperfectly. Down here, I got some fear of harm. And I break them all up into low, medium, and high. Low, medium, and high. Low, medium, and high. What's the stuff on contamination islands? Pretty easy. What's the middle stuff? What's the hard stuff? And I do it low, medium, and high across all these islands. It's maximally flexible. If I only need 3 islands, I get rid of the other ones. And where do I want to sail into? Anybody ever play Risk? I asked the kids this. They're like, what's that? Sad that is. But basically, we're going to sail in here and try to take this island chain over. Where are we going? I think we're going to the lowest point on the biggest island. That's my preference. So if this is contamination, I'm going to do some low-level contamination stuff first, move my way up, take it, put the flag in, and then decide where we're going next. In terms of the focus of our exposure. Yeah?
You ever reverse that regarding school refusal?
Absolutely. I do.
Could you talk about that maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a ton of, well, actually, let me hang on to that for a bit, because I have some more on it. But basically, there are always going to be exceptions, and if a kid basically says, there's no way I can do that, what can I do that's in the service of moving in that direction? So if it's a schoolwork kid, then I may want to do some academic stuff that's not schoolwork before I send them back in to do schoolwork in school. There's different ways we can come at them. But the long and the short of it is, this is my preference, but my preferences can change in response to the case, the particulars, the kid's readiness. I'm maximally flexible at the line of scrimmage. Peyton Manning. I can call any play at any time. Right? Depends. So that's a joke I made up a long time ago. How many clinical scientists does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is, it depends. Because we're full of caveats. It depends. So this is my optimal series sequencing, but it's going to change based on what I'm looking at. Okay? The fear thermometer, fearometer, 0 to 10, 1 to 10. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to do it. I don't spend a ton of time on this thing because I don't want to reify numbers. Oh, I can't do the 7s. I can only do the 6s. Bloody difference. Low, medium, and high. Make it simple and don't get so stuck on the numbers. Well, I started at a 7, now I'm a 4. Am I down by enough for move up? I don't know, let's find out. You want to go up? John Abramowitz again, willingness. He's less interested in what the number is than he is about your willingness. So if you're down a little bit, but you're willing to keep moving, let's go. As long as you're not ritualizing and avoiding, let's go. Well, you have other people who, 3, they can't handle a 3, so I'm going to take my time. Depends. A couple of examples. It's contamination hierarchy. Kid had a thing about hepatitis, for some odd reason. And involvement of actually getting parents to be contaminated by hepatitis was the worst. Simply hearing about hepatitis was pretty low. So in a given session, I'm trying to get at least through half of this hierarchy. I don't have time to do one session of all of these things if I don't have to, right? Because if you think about OCD is like Hawaii, this is only one island. I have 4 hierarchies. I'm going to take a single session to do all of this. That's 44 sessions. I don't have 44 sessions. In clinical practice, I might have 10. So I better get on with it. Best I can. I think this one's interesting. This is a good night ritual. At the end of the night, 11-year-old. And had to say goodbye. It wasn't good night, it had to be goodbye. And be goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye. No, it's wrong. Goodbye, goodbye, say goodbye. Goodbye. No, you did it wrong. Say goodbye. Goodbye. No, that's wrong too. 45 minutes. Right? So what are we going to do about this? We're going to do some exposure. The worst thing is mom leaving without saying goodbye. And the fear is that if I don't get the proper goodbye, something's going to happen to mom. So I got to fuss with this. And some of this I can do during the day. Having them leave the room during the daytime, I can do that in my office. I mean, a bunch of these you got to do at night, at home. Skype and texting. We got all sorts of ways to work around some of this stuff, but you're going to need to have them do it. And it wasn't always logical either. He was more concerned about mom being harmed than dad, and dad had a pretty dangerous job. But OCD isn't always logical, that's fine. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes about the real meaning of that order. So what? Fair enough. Let's keep moving. Okay? Anybody recognize that game? Look carefully. Snakes and ladders. The British version. I spent a lot of my childhood in Ireland. And the British version was snakes and ladders. I don't know how snakes got involved. I mean, there's allegedly no snakes in Ireland. Whatever, same idea. Climbing the exposure hierarchy. You roll the dice, sometimes you hit it. You do great. You move up. Good for you. Other times you do an exposure and it doesn't work as well. You slide back. The snake eats you and poops you out to 7. Okay. What are you supposed to do to win the game? Keep rolling the dice. Keep rolling the dice. Change is not linear. You have good days and bad days. Some days are better than others. I think that's a U2 song. It's all right. Keep going. Keep rolling. That's how I do a kid session typically. Check in. Because if you give a kid homework and don't check it, what are you telling the kid? Homework doesn't matter. My 8th grade daughter, at one point, she and her classmates suspected that the math teacher wasn't checking the homework. So as a class, they decided every answer to tonight's homework is 7. No matter what the problem. 7. They get it back and everyone gets a full check mark.
Oh.
Ha! Became a bigger issue at some point, but it was an interesting experiment. But you tell a kid that homework doesn't matter and that homework's not going to matter. My homework matters. I can barely get out, hi, how are you? Hi, how was your week? How's the homework? You get the homework yet? Did I see the homework? How did it go? I got them sending Excel spreadsheets and all sorts of stuff. Oh, let's take a peek at the homework. Because I want to get on with the exposure, but I also want to make sure they know homework matters. It's a big deal. Between session compliance is more predictive of outcome in adults than within session compliance. And that's definitely true in kids. We haven't tested that one yet formally, but if you just do work in my office and go home and do nothing, you're Sisyphus. I'm not afraid to roll that one out either. You guys ever heard of Sisyphus? Who? Let me explain who Sisyphus might be. Push it. I do my exposure. I agree with the kid about the homework. Then I get the kid, typically, this is older kids and adolescents, get the kid to go get mom and dad in the waiting area, who was ever there. Bring him in. I say to the kid, okay, tell your mom and dad what we did, why we did it, what you're doing this week for homework, and what their role is going to be. I can do that in 5 minutes. But I'm trying to tell the parent the kid's in charge. I'm trying to tell the kid the kid's in charge. And I'm trying to get a conceptual check on the kid's understanding. Because as I said before, the kid doesn't understand it. You walk to the line of scrimmage and you see a defense and you don't know what's going on. Guess what? Your play's not going to work very well. You got to be able to know it. Okay? Now, I like this one about reinforcing OCD. OCD is like my dog. We have Newfoundlands. Ever see a Newfoundland? It's like a Shetland pony. And the thing is, its head is about this high. It's sitting on its butt. And this is the dinner table, and this is the head. Like the one we have now, he's about 150 pounds. We had one who was 200 pounds. Big dog. And drooly dogs. And they're lovely dogs, but they are. Yeah. So, Newfoundland comes to your table and comes to beg. What should you do? Should you feed him to make him go away temporarily? No. He's going to come back. He learns stuff. Even if you, like my kids used to be able to take the chicken and throw it into the living room and get it to go under the couch, but the dog would, move the couch with its water buffalo head and get the chicken and come back. And they're like, he's back again. Of course he's back again. You got to not feed him. But the problem with not feeding him is what? Drool. Begging, whining. That big paw. His paw is much bigger than mine. He put his paw right in your leg and drag it across your leg. I haven't eaten in weeks. It's been weeks. Oh, cruel master, just a bite. And people are responsive to this. You can't be responsive to this. I act as if he's not even there. So how was your day? And he did not beg from me. I'm not cruel. I just ignore what I need to ignore. He learned. He gets it. Then we started to feed him after we were done. So the clinking of the plates, what we call it. That's the signal. So he'll sit there now and wait. But when the clinking of the plates begins, he gets very excited. He's a big dude. He's about on his hind legs. He's looking me in the eye. So you better make sure you got this guy under control. I like OCD. Right? Boss it back. Say no. Ignore it. So, homework. I give you stuff we did in session or stuff you can't do in session. Homework from school might be a good one. Perfectionism. You find out what kind of work is harder for them. For some, the multiple choice absolute answers is harder. For others, it's the other way. It's the ambiguousness of writing. How do I know it's right? Well, you don't. Write it anyway. Practice it. Okay? And I reward them for effort. Let me not spend too much time here on these. I want to get to the little kids. So, you're doing all this stuff. Imaginal and in vivo. I'm pointing out when the outcomes don't match what they said. Right? So we just did an exposure in this office in which we confronted your fear of scrupulosity. You're afraid of saying bad words is going to result in our losing our souls. Well, let's find out. As a sign that Satan has taken our souls, we've asked him to turn the walls blood red. And then I asked, well, what do you make of that? Our contract says 3:30. Where is he? And they're like, what? Where is he? He's supposed to be here at 3:30. So either one of two things is going on. Either the all-powerful Prince of Darkness is stuck in traffic on the expressway, or your OCD's been lying to you. Which do you think it is? Can I get him to push it? Let's go. Let's keep moving. Confront it. This doesn't make any sense. This is not convergent with your faith. This is OCD imposing something on your faith. Let's not let it do that. Okay? Imaginal, same as adult, but I modify sometimes. I'll have them write it instead of listen to it. Or have the parent, bedtime story. OCD bedtime story. So we'll stick it in usually as the first one. And then parent tells it, child tells it, fool around with it, fuss with it, listen to it again and again and again. So your board's silly. Then we move up. Nothing terribly exciting on here. I'd say you just got to make sure you're giving it the old college try. Use detail. Anyone ever read The Fall of the House of Usher? Poe? First 2 pages of that, that's how to write an imaginal exposure. When I'm doing imaginal exposure with teens, that's the first thing I go for. Here, look at the detail, look at the richness of this. He developed a feeling. Let's make sure we're not just saying, I touched something and I felt bad. That's not an imaginal exposure. It's not a good one anyway. Young kids. Young. That's my goal. What a happy guy, filthy as he is. Look at those hands. Isn't that fabulous? Catching frogs. I was a city kid. I'm catching frogs. What? How would you do that? It took me a while. A couple of trips to the mountains. Jen Freeman, my co-author on the revised book for the older kids, but she wrote the manual for the little kids. She and Abby Garcia. It's family-based treatment. You're having sessions with the family almost every session if you can. Every minute of every session. Some sessions it's only the family, not even the kid. You're working on stuff. There are child tools, parent tools, and a lot of family process stuff. Accommodation. Number 1. Accommodation. I want my kid to get to school on time, so I lay out her outfit and all of her stuff in advance. Because otherwise she'll be stuck choosing. Right? Which sounds like a fabulous idea, doesn't it? You know, who wants to be late for school? The problem is the kid has no agency now. Right? Do the laundry 4 times in a row. So he can function. But at some point, this is going to fall apart. We've got to confront this. Just do it once and take a risk. Or not do it at all. It'd be amazing when my son comes down with sometimes. Like, wow. Probably should have watched that last week. Reward program. One thing I say about these. The trip to the zoo. I'm not sure what creature that is. What is that?
Hippo.
It's a hippo. Oh, you're right. I was going to say pig, but I guess they're kind of related. Water horse. So, you get to go to the zoo. Well, one time I did this, and the kid, was doing exposure. We're calling things in, right? And the kid's here. And the kid comes back the next week, and all these things are X'd out. Like, what happened to your chart? The kid's like, I hit my sister. Oh, you lost your zoo trip? That's a problem. No, I'm not saying you should hit your sister. I'm not saying we should just, he's got OCD. Yes, you can hit his sister or anything. No. But you don't take this away. You earn that. How about if Penn did that? I miss a day of work and they take away my salary. How long am I going to work at Penn? Not too long. So we have a reward program. We stick with it. If you did something behaviorally that you shouldn't have done, we can find another relevant punishment. Don't touch my chart. That's my buy-in. Okay? The younger the kid, the more you need them, too. Are you the wrong way? Is he in there again? What am I doing? Aha! I'm not sure what's going on here.
Did you have, yeah.
What's that?
A few slides repeated.
You might have had the same slides
Oh,
in there
okay.
twice.
So I should be going forward again.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Perfectionism is being confronted. Oh my God, these people are going to hate me now. They're going to downrate me. Now, if it's on a loop, then we'll chat then.
There you go.
All right. Don't know what that was about. It's a fabulous example, though, right? Should I run out of the room screaming? Beg all of you for forgiveness? Or just get up and keep moving? All right, pop the bun up. Give me 20 more. All right. So, little kid trial, multi-site trial, three sites, Brown, Penn, and Duke. Kid's about 7.5, a little bit younger, and they've had OCD for about 2 years. Majority of the sample is slightly older than 5 to 6. They're 7, 8. 90% Caucasian, despite efforts to recruit more broadly. It's a big issue in OCD research. And remember the Y box or Psi box? Higher is worse. They start at exactly the same point. This is family-based relaxation is my control. Remember what I said? And this is an interesting study because a lot of families were disappointed. They got randomized to the active treatment. Oh, we wanted the family-based relaxation thing. But it's the control. But it fits better, right? You got to give them techniques to calm them down. What techniques are you going to give them to calm them down? Help them calm down. Help them relax. Hurry up and relax over there, would you? I don't have any techniques for that. I don't want to do that. I want you to function anyway. Courage, right? You're terrified and you do it anyway? That's what this is. I don't want to terrify you. I would rather work up a hierarchy, but in the end, that's what we're doing. Right? And so you see a little bit of reduction from family-based relaxation, but family-based exposure is a lot better. Gets you down to around 11 and change versus a 19 or 17. But a significant difference. And when you look at functioning, it runs the same way. So I'm out of things to say. And I'm going to pay homage to Bill Belichick. He's always so delighted to take people's questions. He was not delighted at all after this Super Bowl, which I must say I enjoyed maybe more than I should have. So, questions? Yeah, in the back.
We have an often discussion amongst us therapists about whether we have our folks who have a metaphobic OCD actually try to make themselves throw up. Just
Yep.
curious what you do.
I don't.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, the question was about a metaphobia, vomit phobia. Do you make them throw up? I'm actually writing a paper right now, and the title of the paper is To Puke or Not to Puke. Because it's a legitimate question. If you're afraid of throwing up, we should probably have you throw up. But except maybe not. I should have you do all the things around that, and let's see if you do. That's my guess. Some of these kids can go 10 years without throwing up. You ever thrown up? No. Why do you hate it so much? I don't know. So we do a lot of stuff around it. And YouTube has been my best friend. I love YouTube. YouTube, and there's also there's a website out there called Great Vomits of the 20th Century. Very clever Australians have put that in there. And basically you got to screen it a little bit for the onset of the vomiting problem. Sometimes they start in pubs. But if you can pull those out of there, then you can find it, because the visual content's usually harder than the verbal. So first it's writing the words themselves, then it's Great Vomits of the 20th Century, then it's YouTube. And watching people throw up backwards is usually kind of fun. Then you work your other way. Then you start, we have vomit recipes and the like. We do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't make people throw up.
Marty, metaphobiaresources.org is a self-directed exposure program online.
That's fabulous. Everybody hear that?
Metaphobiaresources.org.
Resource.
Resource? No S at the end.
Ah,
And it's hierarchical.
fabulous. Yeah, and you can create, again, you're going to borrow from these resources yourself as a therapist, but you're going to be borrowing, but you're always going to be tailoring. So there's no particular place or resource or thing that's going to be the thing for your person. That's your job, is to sort out where it fits, how it fits, but it's great to see these things are out there. At least once a month, I come to my the kitchenette in our area, and I see a bowl, I'm thinking, oh, someone made gazpacho. No, they did not. Someone made a recipe of vomit from the internet, and we always compare them, like, which is more authentic. You get used to anything, right?
You can, on Amazon, you can find a spray that smells incredibly like vomit.
Yeah. If need be.
Yeah.
And again, if I don't need to go and do those kinds of things, I don't necessarily think I have to, but it's great to have them available if you do need them. More questions? Yes. Yep.
A quick question regarding checking compulsion
Yep.
and seeking reassurance. I had a patient who told me once that she has improved from not checking 5 but checks once, but reassures herself, writes a note that I have checked once. Does that interfere with treatment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is it good?
Better.
It's better. Is it a step in the direction we need to go? Absolutely. Is it a nice interim step with which to land? Yeah. Do I want to plateau there? No. So fabulous, good for them. And I don't want to be, I don't know, persnickety. So I want to reinforce their efforts. I want to say that's a really good job. I like the way you're thinking about it. But then, especially if you're mid-treatment, well, what do you suppose you could do to close this off? And if they say, well, I can't do anything else because then I'll have to be anxious. Then I'm like, I think we have a few more steps to take. Yeah, but
Thank you.
reward them, reinforce them for effort. Because what you don't want to be pedantic. Nobody likes a pedant. Well, the literature would suggest that. Oh, shut up. It's true, but because the better you do, the better you're going to do. That's a Blair Simpson trial we did with adults with OCD. We looked at post-treatment outcomes and whether they predicted follow-up. How were you going to do in 6 months based on how you were doing it post-treatment? And the answer was it did matter. So if you were, I think it was a 12. If you were 12 or down on the Y box after behavior therapy, you'd maintain your gains. If you're 13 or higher, you're going right back where you came from. Because think about it, the analogy would be smoking. So I've gone from 2 packs a day to 2 cigarettes a day. Like, would we agree that's better? Yes, we would. Wouldn't we? Would we say we're still leaving the door ever so slightly open? We are. So I would want to be picky at that point. But I wouldn't be picky while they're getting there. Oh, you're going to have to get rid of everything all the time. It's like session 2. You have to get rid of all your compulsions, or all will be lost. Like, that's not exactly exciting and enthusiastic. Yes?
If you have a kid who was very bullied and traumatized by it, and then as a teenager they had self-doubting obsessions due to the bullying, how would you treat the PTSD?
I'd want to, I mean, that's a complicated question I don't think I can answer in a short amount of time. But what I would say is it would depend on how the two intersect. First case I ever saw was a case where the OCD clearly was a result of a trauma. And we treated the guy's trauma. The guy's trauma was better, but he still had OCD. And at some point, I was an extern, and they're like, why don't you try doing the ERP thing with him? And ignore the trauma. We've worked on the trauma. Go after the maintenance factors. 71-year-old pharmacist, actually. And with contamination and checking. And so I ignored all the things that were starting the process. It was combat related. I will not go into the detail. But what I will say is, after we just decided we'll leave that out, we're going to work on the maintenance factors, treatment worked like a charm. And so to me, it suggested a couple things as a young clinician. First thing it suggested to me is I got some flexibility here. How much or how little I'm going after trauma. The second thing it suggested would turn out to be false, which is that OCD is often embedded in trauma. The vast majority of people with OCD don't have a trauma history, criterion A events. But when you do, now you got to figure out how it's linked to or not linked to the stuff you got to do. So it's we could spend 12 hours on it, which I won't.
This was linked to it, but you're saying it wouldn't matter.
I'm saying
you didn't treat the trauma?
Back to my light bulb joke. It depends. It depends. And there's a lot of things in there that I can't answer in a short amount.
Yes, a lot of parents can show up wanting talk therapy, or as you're in the midst of therapy, want you to spend more time talking with your child. It seems to be a little bit of resistance, holding on to an old idea. How do you feel in that conversation?
I mean, my main question is why? So, if a parent has a particular orientation, it could be from their history. Well, we tried this behavioral stuff and we hated it, or it didn't work. Or it could be that that's their mechanism of understanding how OCD works. So if somebody thinks that talking about it is going to result in behavior change, I can have that discussion. I can say, well, it sounds to me like you think that simply talking about it is going to be useful. And let me walk you through a couple of studies in which the control treatment was more about talking about it, and psychoeducation, supportive counseling. And what I would say is, if you're ready to do either, the data would tell us we ought to go after the ERP. But if you already had ERP and now you're just looking for something else, it's a different question. So it depends. My answer to everything. Yeah.
Do you have a theory of why people with OCD come to take their thoughts so seriously?
I'd say probably negative reinforcement, in the sense that if I can do a half-decent job of getting rid of them, I feel better, and that fans the flame. But I also think there's enough compelling neurobiologic evidence out there, and genetic evidence, to suggest that there are certain people that are higher risk for having, and the question is, are you at higher risk for having unwanted thoughts? Or are you at higher risk for appraising them in a certain way? My guess is it's for having. And so the appraising is something we can work on in the treatment. But I think the frequency, I mean, if you want to talk to the hardline neurobiologists, they'll say there's this signal emanating from the prefrontal cortex. The biological reductionists will say, okay, there you go. But my question to that is, okay, there's a signal emanating from the prefrontal cortex. What am I supposed to do in the presence of that signal? And that's where the road forks. And we can do something about the signal by, in theory, the SSRIs are designed to reduce that signal. But in the absence of doing that perfectly, which the SSRIs rarely do, my choice is going to be, let me go after the maintenance factors. And I think we're done, right?
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you.